Hello and good afternoon. My name is Marc Yamaguchi and I wrote and created Arai Guma. It's a short story that I created in the School of Advancement because I teach English there. And I'm very grateful to be with you, and I want to thank the committee, especially Luke Kurowski, who dared me to do this in the first place, because I think he wants your consensus that I'm the nutty professor. I insisted on giving a presentation about talking raccoons. Actually, an early iteration, I don't know if Gary Lipschitz is in here, but an early iteration of Arai Guma came out as one chapter for this story that's blossomed into 11. And Calm Dialogues, Sherry Hajazi over here. Yeah, she and Gary and a number of people always ask the English faculty to come up with short pieces of fiction or nonfiction on a semi-annual basis. And at the time, I was struggling with how to draw on my background, my graduate work in environmental education and communication. So I sat down to write a story that wasn't too preachy and spurred awareness about anthropogenic change. And what became of that was this fictional account of the anthropomorphized raccoons, who I reckon elicit curiosity, skepticism, questioning, and emotional intelligence in mature young adult readers.
Arai Guma, written by Marc Yamaguchi, illustrated by Hung Hong.
Let's go, let's get lost in a dream. You and I make the sweetest of teams.
When a family of raccoons are forced to migrate from the countryside to the city, they find it hard to make ends meet. The culprit? Those flashy, newly engineered, raccoon-proof green bins.
So, Heeding the Call of the Wild is my short talk about the relevance of modern storytelling and the use of irony to promote critical thinking in young adults. Arai Guma has been posted as a YouTube web series with illustrated stills that accompany my narration. And the narrative doubles as a satire about consumerism and the consequences of wasteful practices. In the context of being an educator here at Centennial, I created a minor assignment for my College Communications 1 or COM 160 students to interact with the digital media. Getting learners curious about the stories really invites them to practice critical thinking. And modern storytelling thrives on compelling visuals and audio that are compatible with net applications, and I really think learners can be enticed by that value proposition. Ideally, we can encourage those learners to filter the information, prevent bias, and maybe inspire them to become co-creators. Heeding the Call of the Wild is an acknowledgement that as educators, we can create the spaces for our learners to safely and meaningfully engage in material that was meant for them.
Arai Guma, Chapter 8, by Marc Yamaguchi. Severn hated being called a butcher. He despised the rape and pillage mentality that had plagued movements before. He wanted the Severnites to confront the scarcity of resources with precision and calculation. And those who yielded would be spared. By incorporating more raccoons into the economy, Severn could proselytize them. After all, demand was nothing without supply. He was a statesman, he was sophisticated, and he superseded his savage ancestors by manipulating systems for his own gain. Rachel could not indulge in such thinking. As she and Ray approached Severn's chamber and the vault where the green wheelie was kept, Rachel turned to her brother for guidance before taking any further steps.
It's a nice cliffhanger there. I hope you'll look me up, share and like, subscribe. Fiction can hold the imagination of our learners, along the usual lines of setting, plot, character development. But I think our learners make tremendous gains when we stoke their imagination, and we can do that with creative learning resources like digital media to help them process abstract concepts. Recently, there was an invitation to attend a Teachers of English as a Second Language conference, and that featured a keynote presentation entitled Critically Engaging with the Disruptive Potential of Technology Use in English Language Teaching. On this point, I believe digital storytelling also has a role to play. And here's what a few academics have said on the topic. A world-renowned mathematician, Terence Tao, in his masterclass said, making a problem fit into the context of a relatable story can also give you insight or clues about it. It helps the viewer understand what's going on. If there's a protagonist and an antagonist, if there's some goal to solve, there's some obstacle. Framing things in a way which has a narrative to it activates certain parts of your brain. And an arts education journal cited digital storytelling provides a powerful media literacy opportunity, as students are required to understand the art and technique of successful media communication and persuasion. And it also depends on creativity, innovation, collaboration, design, critical thinking, and other 21st century partnership skills that have become key in the digital economy. However, digital storytelling also presents a challenge. Stories are inherently hypnotizing, and they depend on the listener's willing suspension of disbelief in order to be successful. Critical thinking is the opposite of this. It demands that students employ disbelief in the pursuit of understanding what is true, accurate, and relevant. To this last point, I think even the average reader or viewer of digital narratives can make that distinction and appreciate the artifice behind certain messaging. With respect to Arai Guma, I provided a discussion board for my section of COM 160. Many of you who are teachers here recognize that format. And it's very, very simple, where we created a find the main idea exercise at the end of the semester. And it resulted in summative assessments that were concise, coherent, and showed evidence of critical thinking. Last month, and this is my current COM 160 section, we did a show and share with a small collection of our library's indigenous graphic novels. This is my copy of This Place 150 Years Retold, and it's a powerful anthology of indigenous illustrated stories which warrants, I think, some caution as you flip through the pages of the sensitive material. This complemented our regular curriculum around reconciliation. And in our Canadian Writers' Workplace, there's actually 2 articles with themes of the residential school experience. And I believe that the comics became the conduit with which to access that challenging subject matter. When Sean Kinsella, director of the 8th Fire, learned what I was bringing to class for my students to explore about teaching on the subject of Indigenous sovereignty, he shared with me a website that reviews Indigenous publications, and the editor of Book Riot writes, graphic novels are a relatively young medium, but they have a special ability to cut right to the chase of a story. They provide a type of double understanding that helps to reinforce complex ideas. By pairing text with illustration, the art form helps us to experience the work as a whole. And additionally, the comics are an important tool for accessibility. Right? A person who may not read a 300-page book may be able to read a 300-page graphic novel with little trouble. The title of today's conference, the Symposium on Critical Thinking in Education, carries a certain weight, and I own that digital media may not square with all educators' pedagogical methodology. But I want to wrap with one more anecdote. And in the early 2000s, I was brought in as a curriculum developer for an ESL franchise called Gaba e Kaiwa in Tokyo, Japan. And the CEO in this meeting made the case for edutainment. Right, education and entertainment. His executive wanted the company to produce its own textbooks by pairing the Japanese comic illustrations or manga with language content. some of us scoffed at the idea. And I can say 20 years later, I'm starting to see the merit in what was proposed and how he was ahead of the curve. And I'm playing catch up now, but if you were to suspend your disbelief a little longer, you might hear the call of the wild too. Thank you.
Arai Guma has been a special collaboration between the creator Marc Yamaguchi and illustrator Hong Hong. Thanks to Arai Guma's supporters, Gary Lipschitz, Alan Wong, Ryan Dean, Riel Aarons, Anthony Jinsu Park, Sheila Green, Jason Raposo, Signe Langford, and Craig McKay. Please reach Mark at yamaguchimaaku@gmail.com and 416-786-5308.